G'day guys, how are we going? Welcome to another episode of Dream Fights. And in this episode, we will be having Aussies versus Aussies. Yes, the current top 10 pound for pound fighters in Australia, according to my humble opinion, or in my humble opinion, against some of the greats of yesteryear. Now, I know there'll be a few of you out there thinking, what drugs is this guy on? What is he doing matching up these guys? Well, as I said, it is the current top 10, in my opinion, that I just want to match them up against someone from yesteryear. Now, there are a couple of notable absentees from this episode. First of all, Jeff Fennick just could not get a suitable opponent for him. The only ones that I could have matched him against are the two Maloney brothers or Sam Goodman. I just wasn't quite sure that would go down too well, even though both Maloney's have won world titles and Sam Goodman's about to fight for a world title. The other one was Liam Paro. I considered putting him in with Costazu, but as well respected as Liam Paro is, again, I wasn't quite sure how well that would down. These are just two of the most revered fighters in this country, and arguably, I probably would be breaking my own, I suppose, opinion in that I've never regarded Costazu as being Australian. He was a Russian-born fighter who had his career here and then went home. Or his pro career. He had his amateur career in Russia, obviously born and raised there, had his pro career in Australia, and then went back home. That's why I haven't put him in there. But even if he was born in Australia, I think you can forgive me for not putting him in with Liam Paro, even though Liam these days is, again, as I said, very, very well respected. I think that was about it. Now, the other one was cruiserweight. The Jai Pataya fight. I put him in with Danny Green. There will be a few of you going, how can you put him in at cruiserweight? Well, he did actually have the last 8 fights of his career at cruiserweight. That's why I've put him in there, including, was it 2 world title fights? At least 1 world title fight anyway. So that's why. The way this normally works is we have one fighter. We pick someone from whoever it is, not just from Australia, all around the world, and we put him in against 10 opponents. I will go back to that probably next time. But I just thought this time we just put the Aussies in and see how they fare against each other. We've got a few comments in the chat before we get going. Oh, yeah, I knew this one was coming. Big J, Lyndon, you are hereby charged with forgetting the Aussies again on this day. 8 years ago, Jeff Horn pulled off the upset of the century against Pac-Man, and you forgot it. Yes, guilty as charged, Big J. The problem is when I do the on this day, sometimes, like the WBC side will only obviously have WBC fights on there, their fights. WBO don't actually have a page where you can actually have a look at. There's some pages you go to will have all sorts of things, but just sometimes they just don't bring them up. And Australian fights, for some reason, aren't really top of the priority list. Now, it wasn't until I got home, it was probably about lunchtime. It wasn't even, it was probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. So a couple of hours after I actually did the video, and I thought, oh my God, I've forgotten Jeff Horn versus Manny Pacquiao. So I will address it tomorrow, Big J. But yes, I am hereby charged and guilty of forgetting Jeff Horn's massive upset of Manny Pacquiao. What's that? Yeah, not only did you forget Jai Pataya when he pulled off the upset of the year in 2022 against Breedis, please drop this on the day segment, or at least keep it to the Aussies. Yes, okay. Can't have it all, Big J. I mean, even the few things I put up there, you can't have all fights. Although, having said that, these are very, very significant fights for Australia. So I get it. What's that, Tony? Big J. I think Teddy Atlas might disagree with you about Jeff Horn, as he thought it was a total disgrace, a farce, and he told that director Horn's face after the fight. Which is why, Tony, I've thought that Teddy Atlas is one of the biggest wankers in the sport since that day. How can you, even if you think that, being a professional commentator, that you would say that to a fighter who's just fought the fight of his life and won a very close decision? And I'll repeat it, just because your fighter loses a close decision doesn't mean it was a rip-off. In this case, Jeff Horn got the rub of the green, and I won't hear about it was a hometown decision. They were all neutral judges. I think 3 new or different judges judged it a couple of years later and still had Jeff Horn winning. So anyway, We're getting way off subject here. Who we got there? Garden Snake Mentality. How are you, Garden Snake? Thanks for joining in. All right, so the way this will work, we'll go through from 10 to 1 as far as the current Aussie ranked fighters. Again, in my opinion, I think a few of you will probably disagree. Don't think Matteo Tappi's not in there, and there's Nikita Zuz, a couple others anyway. But again, just my opinion. I'll start at number 10 and go down to number 1, and that's the order we'll go in. I'll give you the poll that was on Instagram, and then I will give my opinion as well. Yes, Big J, who gives a rat's ass what Teddy Atlas thinks? I'm with you there, mate, 100%. I do not care. After what he said, as I said, like, this is the Jeff Horn fight. Even if you think in your heart of hearts that Manny Pacquiao won that fight, just shut up and stomach it or whatever, bite your tongue and give the man his moment. It wasn't like it was a one-sided, rip-off. It was a very, very close fight. And I know people go on about the damage that Jeff Horn received in the fight compared to Manny. What's that got to do with it? I've seen many fighters that have won fights clearly who've come out busted up. It's just the way they are. So anyway, I'm not going to wear that, but that will be addressed tomorrow, Big J. So thanks for bringing that up. Gave up on Atlas a long time ago, but emotionally irregular for me. I'm with you there, Daniel. All right, Big J. Yeah, very rude. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to start at number 10. And again, this will rile a few of you up out there and get the opinion. Just go with it for this episode, can you? We might do another episode. I'll do it on Walking Boxing something. I'll do my top 10. You can put your top 10 in and we can discuss it, okay? Actually, another thing before we get going into this episode, I can't remember who it was. Someone sent me a message on YouTube. I think it was YouTube or Instagram, one of those anyway. And I think I'm going to have a bit of a crack at it. What he was suggesting is we do maybe on these fights, maybe we could do it. We could alternate different fights with the dream fights, but pick a fight, a controversial fight from the past, and put the fight on. I can put the fight on live or not live. You know what I mean? I'm live now, but the fight won't be live, of course. I can put the fight on. We can watch it together, score the rounds, and then we can see who we think won the fight at the end. Now, I did do a similar thing to this a year or two ago. I did a series called not Classic Fights, What's Your Verdict? And I did about 10 or 12 fights from the past that were very, very controversial and everything else, including Jeff Horn, Manny Pacquiao, by the way. And I showed highlights of each round, and then I scored the round at the end of it and did my final score at the end of it and compared that to BoxRec. Because if you're not sure or you weren't sure about this, on BoxRec, you can actually get on there and score the fight. So each round you can put in who you thought won, and it gives the fan's opinion and what the official judges, their verdict was. And it's really actually good to do. So I did that, but doing that might just have a little bit of a different spin on it. So we might see how we go with that anyway, but just something we might do. It could even be something that we do in the off season, I suppose, if you want to call it. There's not much going on. We might put a fight up and watch it and score it and whatever else. But anyway, love the idea, and I really, really appreciate any ideas that you guys have out there just to do something a little bit different. I've always made no secret. I don't want to just do what everyone else does, which is why I do these shows, our Talking Boxing, Walking Boxing, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little bit left of center. No one's really done it before. Then let's do it. What do you got there, Daniel? Bradley versus Pac 1. Perfect for that segment. Yeah, I like it, Daniel. The only thing I was just thinking, the only way, I mean, I can obviously give my opinion. You guys can give your opinion. Do we just go with majority rules? I don't know. I'm not sure whether we can have live polls or whatever it is as we do it. I don't know, but maybe it's just majority rules and that's whoever wins around. I don't know, but great one to get started, Daniel. And I reckon I did that fight as well from memory, I think. What were the other ones? I did Danny Green and Anthony Mundine, the second fight. Lots of them in there anyway. Hagler Leonard was the first one I did. There's a few in there anyway, but great idea for the first fight there, Daniel. We'll have a look at it, mate. All right, so let's get started. And number 1 on the list, but the number 10 pound-for-pound fighter in Australia, I have the pretty boy, Michael Zarafa. Yeah, we've got Mundine Green too, mate. I've done that. But we can do it together for sure. So Michael Zarafa, the pretty boy, 33-5, 21 knockouts up against Daniel Gill. We'll start with Michael Zarafa, turned pro in 2011. Had his first loss, or his big test was also his first loss in 2014 against, what was his name there? Arif Magomedev. I think it's how you pronounce it. Lost that fight. Was very inexperienced with that one, though. Got his next big opportunity against Peter Quillen. Was stopped in the 5th round in that fight. And I think we all know his career so far. He got his big opportunity against Jeff Horn. Took that. Lost a rematch. Took out Anthony Mundine. And since then's been on a bit of a roll. Did lose that fight, of course, to Erislandy Lara for the WBA belt. But as I said, 33 and 5 with 21 knockouts. And I don't know what the hell happened there, but Dale Westerman has just popped up on my screen as far as his opponent. So give me a sec. I'll type in Daniel Gill. I don't know what I did there. Daniel, the real deal Gill. Now 31 and 5, 16 knockouts. A Commonwealth Games gold medalist, a 2000 Olympian, turned pro in 2004. So he must have. So 2002 is when he won the Commonwealth Games gold medal. So he got his first opportunity for a world title belt in, if I can go to it, the IBO belt, I suppose you can call it, against Anthony Mundine. Lost a very controversial decision there. Won the belt for real in the fight with Sebastian Sylvester in 2011. Had some great fights over the journey with Felix Stern, Mundine again, Darren Barker, Triple G, who can forget him, and of course Miguel Cotto before retiring in 2016. All right, to the scorecards of the... Oh, sorry, I better go back to me on home. Sorry, guys. Put myself on back on the home screen there. All right, the official verdict by you guys out there. Wait for it. We'll call it a unanimous decision by score of 79%. The winner is Daniel the Real Deal Gill. So 79% for Daniel Gill, 21% for Michael Zarafa. So look, I've got to agree with that. Look, I don't think it'd be one-sided. I mean, Michael can fight. Make no mistake about that. The problem is that when he's really come up against the elite world-class fighters, he's really struggled. Arguably Jeff Horn, but I know, he's obviously a little bit past his peak, but was he back then? He only had the one loss, but so he showed he could match it with the best then, but since then hasn't been able to measure up. And I think Daniel Gill was, as he says there, the real deal as far as being an elite world-class fighter. Obviously won the world championship, defended it multiple times, all the rest of it. And I just think Daniel Gill's overall ability, his technique, great work rate. Daniel Gill, great on his feet, great with his hands, really, really good evasive footwork. And look, I suppose the easiest way, to come to the verdict, I just think Daniel Gill is a far superior fighter. Not really anything to put the finger on. It's just that he's just a better fighter. And it's going to happen, isn't it, when different fighters fight each other. I just think Daniel Gill is elite. Just everything that he did was first class. I just think Michael Zarafa is just that one tier below that real elite world class, which is why I think Daniel Gill would win a pretty one-sided decision, I think. I'm not so sure he'd stop Michael. I think Michael will be able to hang in there for 12 rounds. He's pretty tough and durable, is Michael Zarafa, but I think Daniel Gill wins a clear-cut decision. Julian says, Daniel sealed for me, or Daniel Gill, is it? Although Triple G KO'd Daniel, he did, but look, a little bit later in his career, and who didn't Triple G KO, Julian? Daniel says, Gilly all day for me. Too strong on the counter, better kid of punches and throws in numbers, class boxer wins. Couldn't have said it better there, Daniel. 100% agree. And I didn't mention also he's an Australian Hall of Famer, is Daniel Gill. So the first one out the road there, and Daniel Gill gets the win over Michael Zarafa. Next up, all right, Tony. Michael has all the skills. It's BS to say he was frightened to fight Tim. I personally believe in the big fights. Nerves gets the better of him. Zarafa versus Gill, Daniel for me. Yeah, look, I've said all along too, Tony. I don't believe for 1 second that Michael Zarafa is scared of Tim Tszyu. Okay, he made the wrong decision when he pulled out of the fight with Tim. I think he regrets it to this day because he might not get another opportunity. But I can 100% assure you that Michael Zarafa was not afraid to fight Tim Tszyu. It's just bad advice, bad management, whatever you might want to call it. and hopefully it doesn't come to sort of back to haunt him for the rest of his career and he doesn't get a chance at Tim Tszyu. All right, let's go to the next fight. Oh, I'll take your comment off there, Tony. There it is. Liam Wilson up against Lester Ellis. Mr. Damage against the Master Blaster. And we'll bring up Liam's record there. So I take myself back to the home screen. Liam Wilson, 16-3, only the 8 knockouts. Now, that's actually surprised me. I always thought he was, he's a big puncher, but only a 50% knockout rate, which is pretty surprising. Having said that, his caliber of opposition has been pretty good. So 16-3, turned pro in 2018. Had his first loss against Joe Noine, but he avenged that in his next fight, of course, the next meeting between the two. Got his first crack at the world title against Emmanuel Navarrete in 2023. In between his next one, he had a good win over Jackson John in England before losing to Oscar Valdez in Glendale, Arizona in 2024. And since then has reeled off 3 wins in a row, including 2 over Yusuf Dib. And his opponent, the Master Blaster, Lester Ellis, 41-8, 28 knockouts, turned pro way back in 1983. Got his opportunity for a world title just 2 years later when he beat One Kill You at Festival Hall. Still one of my greatest boxing memories as a kid. Defended it once against Rod Sequenin before losing it to Barry Michael. And then over the journey, never really got back to those heights. Never got another crack at a world title. Numerous fights with some pretty good guys over the journey. Retired in 2002 with a very, very disappointing loss to Anthony Mundine when he was stopped after being out the ring for 6 years, by the way, and was stopped by Anthony Mundine in that final fight. All right, Tony, actually, I'll go to the scorecards for starters, and the winner by unanimous decision again is Lester Ellis with a score of 83%, compared to Liam Wilson, 17%. So Lester Ellis getting the nod there. What do you got to say there, guys? Master Blaster all day, says Tony. And Knight, what a Aussie boxing icon. Frankie D says Lester by KO. Keep the comments coming there, guys. If I don't see it as I'm going and we move on, I'll come back to it, so don't stress. All right, on to this one. Look, this is probably not as one-sided as probably the poll shows there. I think Liam Wilson would give Lester troubles. The thing with Lester is just supremely gifted, just brilliant with his hands. He had, just one of those great fighters. Brilliant with a hand speed, brilliant power, very good footwork, good defense, although he did get nailed a few times. I just asked Rod Sequenin about that. Almost had Lester gone in that world title defense. And great stamina and just an absolute killer instinct that it was pretty hard to match. The guy had a really mean streak, did Lester Ellis. Nice as pie outside the ring, just a lovely, lovely guy, but inside the ring, he was a killer. The thing that I really regret, probably on behalf of Lester Ellis, is we never seen him, apart from the Barry Michael fight, he was, and maybe Calvin Grove later in his career, he was never matched against the elite. I would have loved to have had Lester Ellis in today's boxing world, to be under the banner of No Limit or a Matchroom or someone like that, who would get behind Lester and give him those big fights. Because apart from Barry Michael, and as I said later on in his career, Calvin Grove, who was pretty washed by the time they fought as well, though he did knock out Jeff Fennick too, didn't he, Calvin Grove? But Lester is one of the most gifted Aussie fighters that I've ever seen, if not the most gifted, and that's a bold statement, I know, but a classic case of just unfulfilled talent. Now, maybe we can blame our good mate Barry Michael for that, because after Barry Michael beat Lester, he was never really the same, I didn't think. Never got a chance at redemption. Went up a couple of weight divisions as well. And, I just don't think we ever saw the best of Lester Ellis. Having said that, with Liam Wilson, again, I'm not going to just write it off and say it's an easy win for Lester. Liam Wilson can fight. He has got good skills. He can punch. But I just think everything that he does well, I think Lester Ellis just does a little bit better. And that's why I think that Lester would win this fight on points. Don't think he'd stop Liam Wilson. Liam Wilson is one of the toughest fighters you'll ever see. He really is, which is sometimes to his detriment. But I just think Lester, he would box Liam Wilson from a distance. Liam sort of showed a little bit of an inability to sort of cut the ring off and probably go with those really gifted type of fighters. And I think Lester would just show him a clean pair of heels, and I think he would win by 10 or 12 round decision, whatever it might be. Julian says, Lester for me, Braybrook boy, certainly was, mate. Just my earliest memories of falling in love with boxing was around Lester Ellis. 85, what was I? I was 11 years old. I've told this story a few times in here, so I won't tell it again, but just that fight with One Cool You is probably is my greatest memory of Aussie boxing. Probably that and Jeff Harding over Dennis Andrews. Just an amazing night of boxing when he beat One Kill You. What a name, eh? One Kill You. What else we got there? Daniel Smart says, the Blaster, too good in this one. Precious too much. Yep. David says, I used to watch Lester live. He was awesome to watch. He certainly was, mate. He always gave value for money, didn't he? Would also have liked to see Lester against George. Not a bad one, actually, Dave. That wouldn't have been a bad fight either. Maybe we could do that down the track as well. Unfortunately, I just had to pick the best one for that fighter. And Liam Wilson being at 130. Lester, of course, won the title there. Didn't really have a matchup for George, probably apart from Katsitas that you'll see soon. But anyway, we might do another one down the track and maybe take requests from you guys. That's what we might actually do. Not a bad idea. It'll be a request one. Dream fights requested by you. The 10 best ones. Lester today and the No Limit would be gold. Yeah, I agree, mate. We have a modern day Lester. Say hello to John Manu, who will be something very special. Yeah, well, he's got a long way to go, Tony. That is a very, very bold statement, mate. But John Manu can fight, mate. No mistake about that. Daniel says, agrees. I think that fight with Baz took something out of him. He never got back. Yep. And g'day to you there, Kane. So, yeah, so that for me, Lester Ellis by decision, whether it be 10 rounds, 12 rounds, 15 rounds, whatever it was, but it would be a war because at some stage they would go to war, no doubt about it. Lester, and that's probably where they've got a lot of similarities, actually, is they both, or Lester was and Liam is, very good boxers when they want to box, but they've both got this gene in them, I think, or this little short circuit that goes off and makes them want to actually punch on when they should be boxing, and they get engaged in a throwdown, and sometimes again it's to the detriment. So maybe we'd see it in they probably box carefully for maybe 6 or 7 rounds, and then the patience would run thin, and they just lock horns. Big J says Lester destroys Liam easily. Julian says, Lester's body punching legendary, same as Barry Michael. Yeah, the only fighter I ever really saw stand up to Lester's body punches, Julian, was Barry Michael. Everyone that Lester hit with that left rip to the body felt it. And the thing with Lester, if you watch him carefully, and I sort of modelled myself a little bit after, in my sort of amateur career, that is, was his left hook to the head, followed by a left hook to the body. Speed to the head, so it's not a powerful shot. All it's there to do is make the hand lift up, expose the ribs, and you don't even see it coming. So it's decoy, and then he dug in really hard to the body. And how many fighters did he put down with that? Just a brilliant body puncher. So you can probably tell that I'm a big fan of Lester Ellis. My first hero in the boxing world, besides Rocky, of course, was Lester Ellis. All right, let's move on. And we're just talking about George Kambosos. Well, here he is. We're going to match him up against Michael Katsitas. I'll just bring myself up there. Where is he? George Kambosos, 22-4, turned pro back in 2013. Had a few good wins, especially overseas, to earn himself, I should say, a world title shot. Those wins over Mickey Bay and Lee Selby. Got that opportunity against Teofimo Lopez, won the belts, undisputed title, and then lost it to Devin Haney, lost a rematch, and of course, since then, it's fought Maxi Hughes, Vasily Lomachenko, and Richardson, the Hitchens in there as well just a couple of weeks ago. His opponent, Michael Katsitas, 33-8, 24 knockouts, turned pro in 2001. And how many wars did this guy have? He won the WBO interim title and had those wars with Juan Manuel Marquez, Graham Earl, even Cesar Amonsot, Joel Casamaya, Juan Diaz, just some real brutal fights. I didn't even know that. He fought Robert Guerrero. There you go. I wasn't aware of that. Ricky Burns. So some really, really tough fights for Michael Katsitas. retired in 2017 after a loss to Jamie Hilt in Toowoomba. And he was it Michael the Great Katsidis? So 2 Greek warriors in this fight. So ferocious against the Great. What do we got there? Big J. How come Lester and not Barry for Liam? Barry was always the best 130-pound ever. No, well, he wasn't actually, Big J. Had his career at 135 and 140, which is why he's at 140 tonight. He did have about 8, 9, even 10 fights at 140. Probably the rest of his career at lightweight, and only had a handful of fights late in his career at 130. That's why I didn't put him in with Barry Michael. I was almost tempted to put Liam in with Robbie Peden, was another one. But I really wanted to get Lester Ellis involved. I was actually going to do another with the Aussies. It was not going to be necessarily the top 10 versus the yesteryear. It's just going to be the 10 best Aussie dream fights out there. So maybe we could do that in another episode, whether they're current or former fighters, whoever the best matchups are, because there's some really good fights that could be made. The best ones, of course, could be a Jeff Fennick, Lionel Rose, Danny Green versus Jeff Harding. So many great fights that could be made. But anyway, we'll worry about that down the track. But that's why Big J only had about 5 fights at 130. The rest of his fights were at 135 or 140. All right, Daniel, I got Mick Katsidis in this one. Too nasty. Having said that, both have great resumes. Julian says George Kambosos' TO fight was tactical and true grit. Kane says Katsidis for me by KO. And Tony says Michael Katsidis as well. Let's go to the scorecards. I can't remember who actually who won this one. All right. Okay, well, it's actually unanimous as well. The winner, drum roll, please, by unanimous decision, is Michael Katsidis with a score of 83% compared to George Kambosos, 17%. So there you go. My thoughts on the fight. Look, I've got to probably disagree with the poll, if I'm being honest. I think George Kambosos can win this one. I'm not going to argue who we got there. We've got 3 or 4 of you guys that have gone for Michael Katsidis. Look, the thing is that I don't think they come any tougher than Michael Katsidis. He was as tough as an old leather boot. He really was. You could hit him with no matter what, and he would keep coming. I just think George Kambosos, I think he could give him the angles and the I wasn't even going to say the speed. I just think his boxing ability, I think Michael Katsidis coming at him would really work to George's in George's favour. I just think those fights he lost, it was him having to come forward against Hitchens, Lomachenko, and Haney. And I don't think he's that type of fighter who boxes well coming forward. I know he sort of bills himself as that sort of warrior, he'll punch on with anyone, and he sort of does. But I think his best work has actually been on the back foot. And that's obviously what Michael Katsidis would bring. So I've got a feeling, just call it a gut feel. I'm probably with you guys. I could probably see Michael Katsidis just storming over the top of George. But I think I think he can match him as far as toughness goes. And I just think his boxing ability and his range, his distance, and his angles would just be enough to keep Michael Katsidis at bay and pick up enough rounds. I'm going to pick George Kambosos in a really, really close fight. A really close fight, that is. Frankie says, George better tactically, but if Mick hit him clean, he'd send him into next week. Did Katsidis come from a kickboxing background? I don't know, Tony. I'm not sure about that one. I wouldn't have a clue. He went to the Olympics from memory. I'm not sure he went to the Commonwealth Games, but he went to the Olympics, I'm pretty sure. And as I said before, those fights that he had, just a tough guy. But I'm going to, look, not with a lot of confidence, I will say. I'm just going to back George Kambosos in this one. Look, maybe it's just it's the Teofimo Lopez fight that gives me a bit of confidence that in the right circumstances against the right opponent, George can win the fight. And the other fight too, the Maxie Hughes fight, again, George was coming forward. He's not a great fighter coming forward, but on the back foot, I just think he would do enough to beat Michael Katsidis, but it would be a tough fight. The Battle of the Greeks. All right, let's go to the next fight. And this one is another tough one. Well, they're all tough, aren't they? This time we're going to have a look at Andrew Maloney, the former interim WBA bantamweight champion, up against Jimmy Carruthers, the former world bantamweight champion. Andrew Maloney, 27-4, 17 knockouts, turned pro in 2014. What was his? I don't know how many it was straight, but he ended up losing to Joshua Franco in their first fight. That was in the bubble in Las Vegas. Had that devastating second round, no contest to Joshua Franco in the rematch, and then again for the third fight in a row. He lost another 12-round decisions. He's had a lot of ups and downs. Let's say got another opportunity against Junto Nakatani in 2023. Was knocked out in that one. I think we can all remember that one, and then lost the WBC interim world title fight to Pedro Guevara, and he's lined up to fight for another world title soon if he can get past RG Cortez this month. He's up against Jimmy Carruthers. Only had the 25 fights, 21-4, 13 knockouts, turned pro in 1950. Won the world bantamweight title with a first-round knockout or stoppage of Vic Tawil in South Africa. Backed it up with a 10th round knockout of Tawil as well. Then I don't think he lost. Did he lose it in the ring? I don't think he did. No, he didn't. No. He retired in 1954 with the belt and then came back 7 years later, and that's when he lost 4 out of 6 fights and ended his career in 1962. All right, so who have we got? Actually, I'll go to, what have we got here? Adam, why doesn't Lucas Batty get a big fight? He's 19-0 with 15 KOs in the lightweight division. Are they ducking him? I'm not quite sure who that is, Adam. Enlighten me there, mate. Lucas Batty. Hang on, we'll have a quick look. No, we'll do that for Talking Boxing next week. That's probably more of a segment for that one. I don't know enough about Jimmy, so I can't make a decision. Pick a fence. Yeah, look, I understand that too, guys. That was the other thing. I almost was going to put Paul Ferrari in this position as well, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I can understand why a lot of you out there probably don't know too much about Jimmy Carruthers. Yep, Kane's the same. Daniel, I'm sure you have. Jimmy was before my time, and Andrew, I know, so I'll sit on the pine for this one. Both Australian boxing legends. Yeah, well, all right, we'll quickly get to that one anyway. I don't expect everyone to sort of know too much about Jimmy Carruthers, but as I said, a world champion back in 1954, I think I said there. Where is the poll? All right, here we go. So this probably shows how good he is. 53% went for Jimmy Carruthers to beat Andrew Maloney, who got 47% of the vote. Look, this is a really, really difficult one, but and footage is not that readily available, Jimmy Carruthers, by the way. Jump on YouTube and have a look if you can. There is a few clips of him on there. This is probably this is why I don't normally do fighters from this era against current fighters, because you just can't get enough footage of them, and probably in hindsight now, maybe I should have made it Paul Ferrari or someone like that to get in there with Andrew Maloney, but we'll stick with Jimmy Carruthers. Look, really, really slick southpaw, very, very good footwork, very, very busy fighter, good head movement, but in this one, I just think Andrew Maloney would be too strong. I just think his body punching, his hooks to the head and to the body, I think he'd wear Jimmy Carruthers down, and I think he would go over the top of Jimmy in the later rounds. Don't think he'd stop Jimmy Carruthers. Very, very slick and good on his feet was Jimmy Carruthers. Andrew would be the one coming forward. Jimmy Carruthers would be on the outside trying to box Andrew Maloney. And I just think, as I said, Andrew Maloney would just be too strong. And again, I know it's hard with someone from 2025 fighting someone 70 years down the track. I understand that. But I'm going to back Andrew Maloney to get the job done over Jimmy Carruthers by, or late round stoppage maybe. We'll see. Kane, an old fella at the pub, told me he had fast hands, very fast hands. Kane, look at him against Victor Will on the YouTube there, mate. Jimmy Carruthers, Hector Thompson matchup. No, unfortunately, Julian, I couldn't really find a matchup for Hector Thompson. Again, it's hard matching up fighters from that was in the 70s, I suppose, wasn't it? But the only ones I could have matched him up with were Tim Tszyu and Michael Zarafa. I just thought Zarafa, Giel, and Tszyu, you'll see in a minute, Tszyu and Troy Waters were the better fights, mate. So, but having said that, as I said before, maybe we can just do best Aussie matchups regardless of generation. So Hector Thompson, there's probably plenty of guys we could. Hector Thompson was actually a lightweight, sorry, wasn't he? Sorry, I'm thinking of Tony Mundine. Hector Thompson was a lightweight. Yeah, I just thought George and Katsidis was a better fight. Paro, Michael, Wilson, and Alice, I reckon, mate. But Hector Thompson, maybe we can match him up. Just Hector Thompson and someone like a Michael Katsidis would have been a great fight, wouldn't it? But maybe next time, Julian. But I will take requests for the next one. And as I said, we'll pick the 10 best ones and put them together. All right, so that was Andrew Maloney and Jimmy Carruthers. Let's move on to the next dream fight. This time we're going to go to the 122-pound division, or 126 even. I'm speaking of Sam Goodman up against the former featherweight world champion, Johnny Famechon. Now, you might be thinking, why am I matching up a 122-pounder versus a 126-pounder? It's because, well, Sam Goodman is now a featherweight. He's going to fight for the world title. Was it in August, I think it is. So we've elevated Sam to fight the one and only Johnny Famechon. So at the moment, Sam Goodman, 20-0 with 8 knockouts. Turned pro in 2018, of course, had those 2 scheduled fights with Nail in a way that didn't fall through. He's, as I said, fighting Nick Ball next month. Has had a couple of okay wins. TJ Donaghy, Ravis Alim were okay fighters. And that's probably about it, if I'm being honest. But if he can beat Nick Ball, well, he would bring home the WBA featherweight title. He's up against Johnny Famechon, 56-5-6 draws with 20 knockouts. Turned pro in 1961 and won the world featherweight title. What year was it? Geez, I reckon I would have done my research, wouldn't you? It was against Jose Legra. What year was it? Was it 1969 from memory? Yes, there it is, 1969. Won the, I was a WBC featherweight title. That was obviously when there was different organisations. A massive upset against Jose Legra. Lost, did he ever lose? I don't think he actually lost the belt from memory. No, I'm not sure why. I'm just on BoxRec at the moment. No, it looks like he actually had 1, 2, 3 non-title fights and then beat Fighting Harada over points, or on points over 15 rounds. Also fought Lionel Rose, of course, and lost the belt to Vicente Saldivar in 1970. I thought he lost it before that, but there you go. That was in 1970, and as I said, 56-5-6 with 20 knockouts. Let's go to the scorecards. And who did I say we had? Sam Goodman and Johnny Famechon. Again, a little bit one-sided with this one. Unanimous decision. Johnny Famechon over Sam Goodman. Tony says, I'm backing Sam. Big fan. I was backing him to beat Inoue. All right, Tony. I don't agree with you there, mate, but hey, it's a free country. That's why we're here to discuss it, aren't we? All right, Daniel, Famo. Come on, Lyndon. The Famo up there is the best we've ever had. I know, but I had to find him an opponent, Daniel. Well, if Sam Goodman's in my top 10, there's really no one else I could put him in with. Actually, the fighter I was going to put him in with was Jeff Fenech. And I think you'd agree, Daniel, put him in with Famo is a lot better than putting him in with Jeff Fenech. So I opted with Famo instead of Jeff. So I'm with you. Julian says, Johnny Famo, ring IQ was amazing. Famo for me because he's a former world champion. Yeah, well, Sam Goodman could be a world champion in another month's time, so you never know. For me, look, I'm going to agree with all you guys. Johnny Famechon wins this fight. What do you got there, Cal? I think some of these older fighters would give this generation a touch-up if they had access to the facilities of today. Yeah, probably, mate. Richard says, Famo for me, but massive fight for Sam to make a huge statement. Yeah, look, again, I think we've just got to... I should have said this at the start. I think we've got to sometimes stop and just not let nostalgia and the history books and I suppose legend just distort our views a little bit. Look, Famo and Lionel Rose and all those guys, they're great fighters, but there's no reason why someone like a Sam Goodman couldn't match Johnny Famechon. A Jason Maloney couldn't match a Lionel Rose. I mean, they're great fighters, but I just think, like, as always, the fighters get better as the years go on. So you just got to get past that. This would be a competitive fight, a super competitive fight. Sam Goodman, I know he hasn't had a stellar record yet or a stellar win on his record, but the guy can fight. Now, yes, we laughed it off when he was going to fight anyway. Well, everyone except Tony, that is. He's got complete faith in him, and he says Sam will be a world champion. But I just think in this one, Johnny Famechon, you remember he had the nice little peekaboo defense before Floyd Mayweather had it. And I think his boxing skills, even though he was back in the 60s, I think he would have enough to beat Sam Goodman. But again, I'm not going to say it's an easy fight, but I think Johnny Famechon wins this on points, whether it be 12, 10, 15 rounds, whatever. It doesn't matter. Johnny Famechon wins this fight. All right, what are we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're halfway there. Let's move to the next one. This time we go to the heavyweights. Now, this one was tough. We've got Justice JPH Honey up against an absolute killer heavyweight in Jimmy Thunder, a.k.a. Jimmy Pugh was his actual real name, but Jimmy Thunder was the name that he went under. Just a little bit of disclosure here. Wasn't technically an Aussie. He was a Kiwi, but actually based himself here for his career. So, and unfortunately passed away a few years back, but went to America, had some unbelievable wins. If you have a look at his fight, I think he holds the record for the quickest knockout, where the bell rung and boom, it was all over in about 2 seconds. It's on YouTube. Check it out. The guy was a massive, massive puncher. And now I couldn't really think of anyone else to put Justice Honey in with. I mean, technically, maybe we could have gone for a Big Daddy Brown. He's only recently retired. We've got to go back a little bit. I thought about Dave Russell, more of a cruiserweight rather than a heavyweight. So I had to go for Jimmy Thunder. And make no mistake about it, if he landed against Justice Honey, we saw what happened with Fabio Wardley, this fight would be over. I'm just looking. Actually, I haven't gone through the records, have I? Sorry. Justice Honey, 12-1, turned pro in 2020, and has had a few okay wins. And obviously, the last fight with Fabio Wardley didn't go according to plan. Won pretty much every round, but was knocked out in the 10th round. Just still trying to get my head around that, by the way. Anyway, Jimmy Pugh / Jimmy Thunder, 35-14. A lot of those losses were very late in his career, though. 28 knockouts, and he was just devastating. So he had he won a lot of it. I think he won his first, where is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 fights, all by knockout, very early. And they put him in with Mike the Bounty Hunter. Wrong move, because Mike the Bounty Hunter came out with a 15-2-2 record and knocked Jimmy Thunder out. But he did. He came back. He then went to. He had a loss against Derek Williams in the UK. I didn't know that. And ended up in the States for the last part of his career and had a lot of fights over there. Actually retired in 2002 after a loss to Colin Wilson. And with all due respect to Colin Wilson, if you're losing to him and you want to be on the world stage, I think it's time to retire. And as I said, lost a lot of those fights later in his career. What have we got there? Kane. Thunder by KOs. You've obviously seen him fight. That Jimmy Thunder quick KO went global around the world. It did, mate. Was he going by the name Jimmy Thunder then? I'm not sure, but doesn't matter whether he's Jimmy Pugh or Jimmy Thunder. The guy was just a killer. Jimmy for a quick KO. Mate, he gave us, lads, some great nights at the Melbourne Showgrounds. I think he had a humorous last name, but he was a great fighter. Rest in peace, big fella. Yeah, well said there, Tony. If Fabio can thunder would put him on the moon. Yeah, who else we got there? Julian, Jimmy Thunder. Justice has great skill, but has a suspect chin. Yep, and there's pound for pound king. Salute to you too, mate. Look, this, it's a tough one. It is a tough fight. Looking at it just skill set versus skill set, I think Justice Honey would pretty much box rings around Jimmy Thunder because he wasn't the most graceful type of guy, was Jimmy Thunder. Had okay boxing skills, don't get me wrong, but he had that killer right hand, and they didn't call him Jimmy Thunder for nothing. Look, I think if Jimmy Thunder landed the right hand, it's all over. But as we saw against Wardley, but I think if he couldn't lay that big right hand on Justice Honey, I think Honey outboxes him. I should go to the score first, shouldn't I? Sorry, before I give my view. If I can find it here. All right, there he is. All right, so the winner by unanimous decision again. Most of these are unanimous by a score of 71% to 29 is Justice Honey. I know a lot of you guys don't agree. What's that, Daniel? Hang on, I've got you there. Justice, as slick as he is, has shown he can be hit lately. If Jimmy hit him, it'd be all over Jimmy by stoppage. Yeah, he was known as Jimmy Thunder during that fight. Okay, yep, cool. Aaron, I never saw Jimmy Thunder, but Honey has all the tools to become world class. Do yourself a favour, Aaron, and YouTube Jimmy Thunder. And as I said, they didn't call him Jimmy Thunder for nothing. Richard, Honey is a smarter fighter, but no offense to the great man. Yep. Look, if I had to pick one or the other, I'm actually going to go with Jimmy Thunder. Only because in a 12-round fight, even a 10-round fight, at some stage, Jimmy Thunder's going to land that right hand. And up until the Wardley fight, I'd be pretty confident that Justice would have what it takes to probably avoid Jimmy Thunder for 10 or 12 rounds. I actually think that Jimmy Thunder is a better fighter than Wardley, better skills. Very line ball, but I think if Wardley can get to Justice Honey, I think Jimmy Thunder would, and I think at some stage he lands that right hand. If all he needs is one, and I think it's all over. So I'm actually going to go with Jimmy Thunder by, let's call it a 6th-round knockout. I don't think he takes 10 rounds to get to him. I think he gets it done in 6. So I'm going to go with Jimmy Thunder. The thing is, if he gets past 6 or 7 rounds, Jimmy Thunder wasn't great endurance-wise. So that's Justice's mainly his ace up his sleeve. But as I said, at some stage, he's going to wear a right hand, and that's all it's going to take. So, David, not sure Jimmy had the stamina. Yep, that's what I just said there, mate. Yep, Andy, power versus skill. Welcome to the show too, Andy. I'm still YouTubing Lester Alice. Oh, mate, do yourself a favour and watch all these fights. Just as I said before, one of the best body punchers and just best or highly skilled fighter you'll ever see. Learn a lot from this potty. Good stuff, Aaron. Well, just anything you want to know, mate, just keep tuning in. If it's the Aussie fighters you're after, well, keep watching these types of shows. All right, so that's my decision on that one. I'm picking Jimmy Thunder to win by 6th-round knockout. Yeah, well done, Tony. Yep, we'll get onto it there. Aaron, tell your mates if they're boxing fans. All right, we will move on. We have 4 fights to go. This time we're going to move to the bantamweight division. And we have Jason Mayhem Maloney up against the great Lionel Rose, the late great Lionel Rose. All right, so to the records, Jason Maloney, 27-4, 19 knockouts. The former WBO bantamweight champion had his first opportunity against Emmanuel Rodriguez in 2018 after turning pro in 2014. Lost a very, very close decision for the IBF bantamweight title. Had another crack at it against Naoya Inoue. No disgrace there. He lost by 7th-round knockout. Finally won that in 2023 with a 12-round decision over Vincent Astrolabio, I should say. Defended against Saul Sanchez and lost it against Yoshiki Takai last year in Japan and lost his last fight, but he will be back. He's up against Lionel Rose, 42-11 with 12 knockouts. Turned pro in 1964. Had a couple of losses early in his career and ended up winning the world title against Fighting Harada in 1968. What a couple of years that was. Lionel Rose in 68, Johnny Famechon in 69. Runs a little bit parallel with Lester Alice and Jeff Fennick, doesn't it? Wasn't known for his discipline. Lionel Rose, he liked the drink and liked the fags and liked food and all the rest of it. And ended up losing his title to Ruben Olivares in 1969. I don't think he got another crack at the title, no. Yes, he did, sorry. In 1971, he fought Yoshiaki Numata in Japan and lost a 15-round decision, and then was sort of a little bit hit and miss after that and retired in 1976 after being stopped in the 2nd round by Maurice Apiang. All right, we've got a super chat there. Thanks very much, Andy. $10. Thank you. Rest in peace, Jimmy Thunder. Yep, subscribe, share, and smash the like button, folks. Yeah, thank you very much, mate. Very much appreciated. Rose for me, says Cal Jane. What do we got there? Big J. This is about Justice. I still say Justice is not going to be a world-class fighter, let alone a champion. But I'm happy for Justice to throw. So make egg on my face. I'd have to make an omelette. Okay. Tony, Lionel for the win. Spent time in Warragul, and let me say, everyone in Warragul loved Lionel. Killer in the ring, would kill you with kindness out the ring. Yeah, very well said there, Tony. That's a really good way to describe him. And let's go to the scorecards, and probably no surprise in this one. If I can find it here. The winner with a score of 94% is that man there, Lionel Rose, the former world bantamweight champion. This is probably another one. I know it's 94% to 6%. I think this would be an extremely close and tough fight. Jason Maloney would fight 15 rounds from start to finish. He'd dig hard into Lionel's body. He would not take a step backwards. I'm just going to think, what do we got there? Sorry, is David says Rose versus Maloney is a toss of the coin. Lionel Harada, one of the best fights ever. Lionel for me says Richard. Yeah, look, as much as this sort of hurts me to say, because I'm obviously a very, very big fan of Jason and a friend, I think Lionel Rose wins this on points, whether it be 12 or 15 rounds. It'll be a tough fight though. And as I said, just because Lionel Rose is often mentioned as Australia's best ever fighter, above Jeff Fennick and many others, and Johnny Famechon and others. As I said, make no mistake, this would be a tough one. I think Jason Maloney would just make life hell for Lionel Rose for 12 or 15 rounds. I just think Lionel's better footwork, and Jason can be a very slow starter. We saw that against Emmanuel Rodriguez, pretty much lost the first 6 rounds just because Emmanuel Rodriguez was very slick, quick on his feet, quick with his hands, good movement. And that is Lionel Rose down to a T. Throw in that Lionel Rose, just the boxing IQ was out of this world as well. So I just think maybe a 15-rounder would suit Jason better, of course. He'd have a lot more time to come onto Lionel Rose. I just think that Lionel would win too many of those early rounds and be able to be sort of slick enough to sort of keep Jason at bay, and I think he wins on points. Julian says, Jason Maloney, elite fighter, Lionel, a legend. Yep. Jason hangs in there, but can't go against Lionel as much as I'm a big supporter of Jason. Yeah, it's sort of my sentiments there too, Daniel. It'd be a great fight, and I'll stick by that Jason gives him all he can handle, but I just think Lionel has that class just to hang in there and win the fight. Where did I have Jason? So I've got him at number 4 as far as the pound for pound goes. So it's a credit to him to be mentioned in the same breath as Lionel Rose. All right, 3 more fights to get to. Let's go to the next fight at 140. Keep the comments coming there, guys. I'll come back to them. This time, it is Liam Paro up against Barry Boy Michael. Now, you might be thinking, why is Liam Paro, a 140-pound fighter, up against Barry Michael, who's predominantly a 135-pound fighter? Of course, won his world title belt at 130. It's because he had, I think I said earlier, up to 10 fights at 140. Anywhere between 135 and 140, that is. So I had no hesitation in throwing Barry Michael in there. It was either that or Costa Tszyu, and I think you'd all agree that Liam and Barry would probably be a lot better fight than Liam and Costa, or would it? I, for one, again, love Costa Tszyu, but is it just me who thinks that Liam Paro would give Costa Tszyu a very, very good fight? Does he beat him? No, in my opinion. But I just think his style would make life very, very hard for Costa Tszyu. But anyway, I just know the poll would be 100% to 0, and it was sort of a waste of time doing so. I've gone for Liam Paro, who was 26-1, 16 knockouts, turned pro in 2016. Won the world title. Had a few good wins in the lead up to this, by the way. Won the world title last year with that massive upset of Subriel Matias, coming off wins, by the way, over Brock Jarvis and Montana Love, and unfortunately lost the belt in his first defense to Richardson Hitchens, but has just had a recent win against Jonathan Navarro, which will hopefully get him another title shot. He's got a world title eliminator in his next fight. He's up against Barry Michael, 48-9-3. Turned pro way back in 1970. Had a lot of losses along the way, but that's because he was in really tough fights all over the world. He got his world title crack against Lester Ellis in 1985 after coming off a win over another very, very highly rated prospect in Graham Brook. And just like Graham Brook, he pretty much ruined Lester Ellis after that fight with him as well as he did against Graham Brook as well. Defended the belt 3 times against Jinsik Choi, Mark Fernandez, and Najib Daho before losing the world title to Rocky Lockridge in 1987 and retiring. And make sure you get to, if you can, in Melbourne, get to his book launch on July the 12th in Melbourne. $50, get you a copy of the book signed as well as finger food on the day. So check out the socials for that one as well. And I mentioned him, I spoke at length about Barry Michael today, an absolute legend of Aussie boxing. All right, before we get to the poll, Tony says, Grouse matchup, and imagine seeing this fight. Having said that, Barry by way of a 12-round decision. What a cracker matchup. Barry Michael, legendary, tough fighter, and body shots. That says Julian there. So we'll go to the poll for starters. I can't remember again what the results were for this one. Where are we? If I can find it. There it is. All right, very, very close one. We'll call it a split decision. By winner of 56% compared to 44%. The winner is Liam Paro. Liam Paro gets the win over Barry Michael. This is a really, really tough one. Look, I'm going to lean to the way of Liam Paro, but not with a lot of confidence. Barry Michael, as tough as nails. We saw against Leicester. It didn't really stress him too much as far as the speed and the power that Leicester had, and I don't think he'd have the similar. Well, he wouldn't be, He wouldn't be that concerned about Liam Paro's speed and power either. But Liam Paro, just the bigger man at 140. Leicester was 130. This is 140. I don't think Barry would be able to muscle him around as much as he did Lester Ellis and some of the other fighters he fought around those weights. I just think Liam has got the boxing IQ to go with Barry Michael. He would stand off. Barry, again, probably one of the best brains in boxing that I've ever seen. So he would more than match Liam Paro in that regard. But I just think Liam being a little bit better on his feet. I don't think he'd trade too much with Barry Michael. It would have to do that to win the fight. I think if he got in the trenches with Barry Michael would win the fight. But I just think Liam, unlike Leicester, wouldn't get drawn into a dogfight, into a slugfest. I think he'd give Barry his respect and keep him at range. Pick him off from long distance, give him some angles, some twists and turns, all that sort of stuff. And I just think Liam Paro wins a really tough, hard decision. Whether that's at 12 rounds or 15 rounds, I think Liam Paro is good enough to get the chocolates over Barry Michael. But again, I'm not saying it with a hell of a lot of confidence. All right, Daniel, Barry in a real difficult one. Yeah, mate, it'd be very, very tough. I think in the cold light of day, I reckon you might tip Barry. Yeah, look, maybe. Look, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Barry Michael won the fight. But I just think Liam Paro is just the real deal. He really is. I just think he's a real elite, world-class fighter. Not to say that Barry wasn't. I just think, again, Barry would... It depends on what type of fight Liam wants to fight. You know what you're going to get from Barry. He's got that cross-armed sort of stance as well. Love to get in close. A great body shot puncher as well. Those little sneaky uppercuts and hooks inside. But again, I just think Liam's smart enough to not fall into the same trap as Leicester. Keep him at range. Pick his shots as Barry's coming in. Then skip off to the side. Counter him all night long. I just think Liam Paro wins on points. But a very, very tough fight to pick. So that is Liam Paro for me. All right, down to the last 2 fights. This time, keep the comments again coming, guys. I'll come back to any ones that I've missed. This time we go, let's call it the semi-main event. The number 2 ranked Aussie fighter in Australia, and it is Tim Tszyu, the Soul Taker. He's up against Troy Waters, the late, great Troy Waters, who sadly passed away, I think, from a form of leukemia just a few years back. Just one of the toughest, hardest fighters you will ever see in Troy Waters. Before I get to that, Dave has a comment. Barry in a split decision for me. Absolute professional. Yep, not going to argue with that at all, mate. All right, Tim Tszyu, the Soul Taker, 25-2, 18 knockouts, turned pro in 2016. Got his first opportunity at a world title. It was a vacant belt. That was against Tony Harrison for the vacant WBO title. He won that by 9th round stoppage. Defended against, was it the interim title, wasn't it? Yeah, Carlos Ocampo, Brian Mendoza for the full belt. Lost it, of course, to Sebastian Fundora. Enough said about the Barkram Murtazaliev loss, and he's come back with a good win in his last fight against Joe Spencer, and he'll get a crack at the world title in his next fight against Sebastian Fundora in about 2.5 weeks' time. He's up against Troy Waters, 28-5, 20 knockouts. Now, never won a world title, but just check out the fighters that he fought. He lost an IBF world title fight in 1989 to Gianfranco Rossi, who made a lot of defenses of that belt. Also then won the WBC belt after that. He got another crack at the belt against terrible Terry Norris when he was absolutely just cutting a swathe through all the best 154-pounders out there. It's probably ranked in the top 4 or 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the world at that stage was Terry Norris. Gave him everything that he could handle. Knocked him down, but was himself retired after the 3rd round after copying a lot of punishment from Troy Waters. And he got dropped with a beautiful right hand from Norris, but got up. Just admire this guy so much. Stopped Olympic gold medalist Robert Wangila in 1993. Got another crack at the world title against Simon Brown in 1994 and lost a majority decision. Then beat former world champion Jorge Vaca in 1995, and then got, I was just going to say it was another world title shot, but it was actually an eliminator against Felix Trinidad in 1997 when he was stopped in the 1st round. Retired on a high, though, in 1998 with a win over Ambrose Milio. So look at those fights. Gianfranco Rossi, Terry Norris, Simon Brown, Jorge Vaca, Felix Trinidad, just some amazing fighters that he fought along the way. The late, great Troy Waters. All right, let's go to the scorecards. And the winner by score of 67% compared to 33% is the Soul Taker, Tim Tszyu. He gets the nod in this one. Tony says, Troy by way of knockout. Imagine if he had a father that really cared for him instead of the other. Yeah, he had a horrible dad, Tony. It was almost should have been illegal what his dad did to the 3 Waters brothers. Kept them pretty much isolated from the world. Trained them all day, every day. Didn't let them go out. Didn't let them associate with people. They weren't allowed to eat junk food or have a drink or associate with anyone else. Just terrible, terrible. And we all know about Dean Waters, his brother, and Sess, his dad, were charged with murder. So all very, very controversial family, but Troy Waters was always a clean skin. He really was just a great fighter. A little limited as far as skills goes, but made up with toughness. Again, great hook to the head, great hook to the body. He would just be in front of you the whole way. And just a little bit unlucky that the world champions around that time were all that quality that they were. Because I think if at any other era, or maybe even in today's standards, he'd probably have a world title belt around his waist. And I think they called him the glamour with the hammer, was Troy Waters. And again, tragic that he passed away, and rest in peace, Troy Waters. David says, for Troy's toughness, I thought his boxing skills were limited. Yeah, they were a little bit there, mate. Bacon and eggs, how are you there, mate? I think Tim has more tricks in his bag, says David. Daniel, a few thought Troy beat Simon Brown. Yeah, it was close. Troy was as tough as woodpecker lips, but I think Tim is technically a bit much for Troy as much as I love Troy. Yeah, look, I'm with you there, Daniel. I think that's what it comes down to. Again, it probably a little bit like the Paro and Barry Michael fight. I think it depends on what type of fight Tim fights. Now, if he wants to fight Troy Waters like he fought Barkram, not to say that Troy was a devastating puncher like Barkram was or is, but I think if Tim got on the front foot and went toe-to-toe with Troy Waters, he might be in a bit of trouble. We saw what happened with Simon Brown. I don't think Tim would do that. I think he would stand at a distance. Troy only knew one way, and that was a straight ahead. Hands up high, walk straight ahead. Just try and cop as many punches on the gloves as you can to get inside and then do your work inside. There's not really a lot of head movement, certainly not a lot of slipping and weaving and that sort of stuff. Didn't really have fast feet, very almost like he had the concrete boots on sometimes, Troy. But if you let him get close to you, then you're in trouble. I just think Tim, if he fought the way he has for 95% of his career, the Barkram Murtazaliev fight being the outliner, I think if he boxed smart, Counterpunch Troy, used his jab, little bit of lateral movement. I think he would pick Troy apart and win a pretty comfortable 12-round decision. Julian says, Troy Waters fought some tough fighters, tough as nails. Troy used to spar with his brother. Yep, he did. He did too, mate. Yes, he did Troy. So, yeah, look, it'd be a tough fight. Troy Waters, again, it was as good as you'd let him. Someone like Gianfranco Rossi, who had that great movement, boxed his ears off for 12 rounds and didn't lose a round. But then you had Terry Norris, who decided to stand and trade with him. Probably hadn't even watched a tape of Troy Waters, by the way. I don't think Terry Norris would have respected Troy at all and almost paid the price. I think Tim would obviously know a lot about Troy, and I think he'd box accordingly and win a 12-round decision over Troy Waters. Daniel, Troy was one of my favourite Australian pugs, period. Yeah, he was. And such a lovely guy too, Daniel. I met him a couple of times and, yeah, really, really nice guy as well. So that is our co-main event. Tim Tszyu getting the win over Troy Waters in a 12-round decision. Excuse me. All right, let's go on to the main event. Well, it's a little bit of a fizzer, really, judging by the results. But we'll go to it. I'm referring to Jai Opetaia versus Danny Green. The main event of the evening fought for, we'll call it the IBF World Cruiserweight title. Now, before we get into it, you're probably thinking, hang on, Danny Green wasn't a cruiserweight. Well, yes, I can assure you he was a cruiserweight for pretty much the second half of his career. We'll go to the records now. Jai Opetaia, 28-0, 22 knockouts, turned pro in 2015 after representing Australia at the Olympics in 2012. I think he's the youngest Olympian of all time. I think at 17 years of age, he represented Australia. Got his first world title crack in 2022, and who can forget that memorable win over Marius Breidis. Defended it against a couple of times. Yeah, Jordan Thompson, Alice Zorro, backed it up with another win over Marius Breidis, and since then has defended the belt against Jack Massey, David Nyika, and Claudio Squayo. As for Danny Green, 36-5, 28 knockouts, a 2000 Olympian, 1998 Commonwealth Games representative as well. He got his first crack in 2003. Who can forget that fight with Marcus Bayer for the WBC belt? Did beat Eric Lucas for the interim belt. Of course, throw in the fights with Anthony Mundine in there as well. Finally won a version of the world title in 2007 against Stipe Drews. Probably one of the worst fighters I've ever seen fight for a world title, but he was a giant. He was about 6'8" tall, I remember. Who can forget the win over Roy Jones Jr.? We will try and forget the Paul Briggs fight. Then he fought Antonio Tarver at cruiserweight in 2011. That was for the IBO world title. He was stopped in the 9th round. Wasn't enough to deter Danny because he went up against, I'm going to try and pronounce this guy's name, Krzysztof Włodarczyk. Is that his name? The Polish WBC cruiserweight champion. He was stopped in the 11th round. After winning that fight, he'd won 10 rounds. What was the scorecards at the time? 96-93, 97-93, and 97-93. So he had that fight won and got caught in the 11th round. Ended up, he beat the likes of Shane Cameron, Kane Watts, and then Anthony Mundine in that last fight. So, as I said, don't write this off as Danny Green not being a cruiserweight, because his last, when was it? I think even the Roy Jones Jr. fight, I think was at it was at 180. He fought 180 for that, so a little bit above the light heavyweight limit. But then for the Manny Siaka fight onwards, so his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fights were at cruiserweight, including those fights for world titles against Antonio Tarver and the Polish guy for the WBC belt. So that's why I've matched him up against Jai Opetaia. And to be honest with you, who else that's just anywhere in the ballpark of Jai Opetaia? I looked at it and went, well, it's either Dave Russell or Danny Green. So it was Danny Green sort of a little bit by default. It's good to have the Green Machine featured in here somewhere along the line. But no surprise, 100% of you guys and girls out there voted that Jai Opetaia would beat Danny Green. And as I said, I had to have someone for Jai, and it just so happened to be Danny Green. Let's get a couple of comments. Where are we? Why not Rocky Mattioli for Tim, former WBC champ? Yeah, that's a good point, Big J. Look, he was the former WBC champ. I just think Troy Waters was the better fighter. I just think Rocky was great in his era, but I just thought Troy Waters, even though he never got that belt, just because he didn't win a world title belt doesn't mean he wasn't a better fighter than Rocky Mattioli. And you're right, it would have been a good fight to throw him in there with. I just think Troy Waters would have been the better fight. I think Tim would have beaten Rocky Mattioli quite comfortably. I think Troy Waters would give Tim a really good fight, and I think Troy beats Rocky Mattioli. And just because he never had that world title belt, as I said before, the level of competition that he fought, no one could begrudge Troy Waters that he didn't become a world champion, because he did everything he possibly could to get a belt and didn't take any shortcuts. It just so happened he come up against some of the best fighters of that era. So that's why I didn't pick him there, mate. Tony, no contest, Jai by a country mile. Sorry, Danny. Cal says, Jai's an animal with new school tricks, tough as nails. Who could forget the Briggs Green fight? I'd like to forget all about that, Tony. Jai's just too big for Danny. Greeny fought at 190 at cruiser, was often fighting much bigger cruisers. Yeah, too heavy for light heavy, too light for cruiser. Stuck in no man's land, but made it work. Yep. Richard, what was Danny like back then in 98? Didn't he also break his hand during the comp? Yeah, that was the Commonwealth Games. We were teammates, Richard. I've been teammates with him a couple of times. Actually roomed with Danny in England at the Liverpool Cup in England earlier that year. And I still remember sitting in our hotel room after we I think we both lost in the semis, I think. And I remember him knocking out the Hungarian fighter, way behind on points. He lost the first 2 rounds clearly, and then boom, he dropped the Hungarian guy in the 3rd round with a big right hand. I remember sitting in the hotel room for about 3 days, just gorging ourselves on junk food, Richard. It was pretty cold outside, and we couldn't be bothered going to the fight, so we ate junk food. But 98, he fought a really tough fighter from Nauru, I think, from memory. I can't remember his name, but used to do a bit of sparring with him down in Footscray in Melbourne. He came out and did a bit of sparring down there with myself and my brother. And he fought Danny at the Commonwealth Games. Danny won the fight very, very easily, but this guy had a head like concrete. Danny hit him, broke his hand, and had to pull out even though he won the fight. Only his first fight too, by the way, which made it worse, and had to pull out. And he hung around for the Olympics in 2000 and then turned pro. And who can forget his fight at the Olympics against, who was it that knocked out Justin Crawford, the Russian? Yeah, I'm sure you'll know who I'm talking about there, but even though Danny ended up getting stopped, he gave him a really, really good fight. Was it Lebziak? I think it was. Yeah, Lebziak. Just a killer as an amateur, he was, Lebziak. I saw firsthand how good he was when he knocked out Justin at the 96 Olympics, but Danny gave him a good fight. But yeah, didn't see a lot of him in 98, Richard. I think he was pretty devastated by the whole thing, and I think he sort of went off and did his own thing after that. But yeah, but obviously almost made amends in 2000, didn't he? All right, Opataya, as he's better on the outside, from my opinion, and probably won't let him in. Jai Patawa, ring IQ, southpaw power. Jai has the works, power, skill, and stamina. Danny was a great ambassador for the Cowards Punch. Rest in peace, Hooksy. Yeah, good call, Tony. Yeah, look, if I'm being honest, again, I had to pick somebody to fight Jai Patawa. And Danny was no slouch at cruiser. I think it was Daniel said in there that he fought at 190, which is and even lighter sometimes. So I just think the sheer size of Jai Patawa, not to mention his overall skills. I think even if they were the same weight and size and all that sort of stuff, Danny was pretty limited in the way he fought. Won a lot of his fights as well just by sheer willpower, big right hand a lot of times, and just hard work and just being hard as nails. And I just think against Jai Patawa, that's not really going to do you any favours. It's not going to benefit you at all, because he'll outbox you, he'll outpunch you, he'll move, he'll punch, he'll do whatever he has to. He just does everything so well. And I've got a feeling that Jai wins this fight by stoppage. I think if Antonio Tava could get to Danny and the pole, he did it more by volume of punches, did the pole. But I just think Jai would just pick Danny apart all night and would, I think, stop Danny in probably 8 or 9 rounds. But Danny would, as always, would go out on his shield, make no mistake about that. But just Jai, just too big, too strong, too many skills, too much power, you name it. He's got just too much of everything. And Jai Patawa wins his fight, as I said, by about 8 or 9 rounds. So which could even be earlier, depending on what sort of mood Jai turns up in. But Danny would be hard, don't get me wrong. If it was a big, solid, strong one, a 200-pounder, he'd give Jai some problems early. But as the fight went on, I could just see a repeat of what happened with Antonio Tava and the pole, and I think Jai gets him out of there pretty cold-heartedly, I would say, with some big shots, and probably drop Danny Green, who would not go down easy. He'd go down swinging, but Jai for me all day. So quick recap of the fights we had. We'll go back to the start. I had Daniel Gill beating Michael Zarafa. I had Lester Ellis beating Liam Wilson. I had George Kambosos beating Michael Katsidis. That seemed to be in the minority. I had Andrew Maloney being too strong for Jimmy Carruthers. I had Johnny Famechon outboxing Sam Goodman. Jimmy Thunder knocking out Justice Honey. Lionel Rose outboxing Jason Maloney. Liam Paro being a bit too slick for Barry Michael. Tim Tszyu being a little bit too much of everything against Troy Waters. And Jaya Pataya just being Jaya Pataya and being way too much for Danny Green. So there are all the results. Let us know your comments in there, guys. Keep it coming. We'll go on for another minute or so before we finish up. But as always, a lot of fun actually doing these segments. And look, again, I'll say it's really hard to match up. And probably in hindsight, maybe what I should have done is just get the best Aussies against the best Aussies, regardless of generation. But I just wanted to do our current top 10 against some of the best fighters of yesteryear. But maybe we'll do another one where it's just regardless of what generation you're from. It could be past versus past. Doesn't matter. We'll match them up because, as I said before, we've got Famechon versus Rose. Maybe Fennick versus those two as well. We've got maybe Tim Tszyu against a Tony Mundine or someone like that. So many great fights out there. Even I think a good fight would be Tim Tszyu and Daniel Gill. That would be a really good one as well. Someone said before, Barry, I think it was Barry Michael against George Kambosos. So many great matchups anyway. Too many to mention. But anyway, that is it for this episode. So guys, again, give us your thoughts and maybe give us some requests as well as some future all Aussie matchups. We'll do them on another episode, and any other ideas you have for any other shows that we do as well. So guys, have a great week, and we'll catch you next time on Dream Fights. Catch you then.